Hello, we are going to be looking at Chapter 23, World War I. Obviously, this is going to be a little extensive because World War I did include the whole world, so this is the overview of Section 1. Competition over trade and colonies led to the formation of two rival European alliances, the Triple Entente of Great Britain, France, and Russia, and the Triple Alliance consisting of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Austria-Hungary, as well as numerous other European governments, confronted challenges from minorities who wished to establish their own national states. Strikes and violent actions by socialist labor movements also threatened European governments. Many European states responded with increasing militarism and nationalism. The assassination of the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary by a Bosnian Serb militant set off a chain of diplomatic and military decisions that led all of the great powers of Europe into World War I. Again, in section number 1, we see the Zimmermann Note. The Zimmermann Note is one of the things that also is a piece of sparking the United States' entrance into the war. You can see that it was a message from a German foreign minister, Arthur Zimmermann, to his ambassador in Mexico. The British got a hold of the message before it could reach Mexico. You can see a picture of it to the right. The message asked Mexicans to support the Germans in return for land in New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona. The British gave the Zimmermann Note to the American government. New pressure for the U.S. to get involved in the war was felt because of the Zimmermann Note. Now, what else might have caused the United States to enter this war as it was going on in Europe? Well, we also have unrestricted submarine warfare and how that was shown against the RMS Lusitania. Unrestricted submarine warfare is when German submarine attacks on merchant and passenger ships carrying Americans happen. They attack ships with warning them first. Ships were carrying supplies to the Allies, and the Germans knew that these supplies were being hidden with passengers around them, and so they decided that they were going to shoot these ships. President Wilson believed that Americans, citizens of neutral a nation, had the right to safe travel on the seas. So one of those rights to travel was on the boat you see at the bottom, the Lusitania, which was a British passenger ship sunk by the German submarine in 1915. Almost 1,200 people died. 10% of that, 128, were Americans. Germany promised to warn ships before attacking them. Passengers could escape. Germans did not keep its promise and attacked without warning. So unrestricted submarine warfare is one of the top reasons why the United States decided to enter the war. Here we have the assassination that was discussed in that second slide. The Balkan Peninsula was known as the powder keg in Europe. That area means that it is going to explode at any time, a powder keg. Austria-Hungary, a central power, had taken control of Bosnia. Oh, I'm sorry about that number that I have there. Blamed Serbia, an allied power, of trying to subvert the power in Bosnia. In June 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austrian throne, was shot and killed as he visited the Bosnian capital of Sarajevo by Gavrilo Princip, 19 years old. You will soon be that age. And he killed a national leader. Well, a soon-to-be national leader. So the slippery slope of alliances also leads to war. The witness to the murder. Here's a reading. Here Princip had taken his stand. As the car came abreast, he stepped forward from the curb, drew his automatic pistol from his coat, and fired 2 shots. The first struck his wife of the Archduke, the Archduchess Sophia, in the abdomen. She was an expectant mother. She died instantly. The second bullet struck the Archduke close to the heart. He uttered only one word, Sophia, a call to his stricken wife. Then his head fell back and he collapsed. He died almost instantly. The officers seized Princip. They beat him over the head with the flat of their swords. They knocked him down. They kicked him, scraped the skin from his neck with the edges of their swords, tortured him. all but killed him. Now, what you can see in this picture is basically the breakdown of all of the alliances that were discussed earlier. So you can see the green is the Triple Alliance, where you have Italy, Austria-Hungary, and Germany. And you can see how the, just depending on where you look, the alliance itself and when it was, the years given inside of there. Then you could see Russia, France, and Great Britain. And that, of course, is where the side that the U.S. will eventually enter in on. Now, looking at this, I do know that there is always a question based upon these tables. Nationalism is the first column. A devotion to the interests and culture of one's nation often lead to a competitive nature between countries, desire for people of the same ethnicity to have their own country. Imperialism, competition among European countries to establish colonies in South America and Africa to get raw materials. Militarism, countries began building large militaries to deter competing countries. An arms race equals as one country began to produce more weapons, such as a larger navy or other weapons, other countries tried to build their navy and weapons. Alliances. What are alliances? The European powers decided to protect themselves by forming alliances, groups of nations that pledge military support to each other. And you can see the Triple Entente and the Triple Alliance there, and the countries that are a part of them. Section 2, World War I. On the Western Front, trench warfare between France and Germany turned into a stalemate and casualties mounted on both sides. On the Eastern Front, Germany and Austria-Hungary defeated Russia. The air war began in 1915, and in 1916 the British used armored tanks. Italy switched sides, and the Ottoman Empire joined the war on the side of the Triple Alliance. The war broadened further when German colonies came under attack, and the British encouraged Arab princes to revolt against the Ottomans. The United States entered the war in 1917 in response to the German use of submarines against passenger ships. As the war dragged on, governments took control of national economies, censored the news media, and used propaganda to bolster public opinion. Women entered the workforce in large numbers. After the war, many lost their jobs to men but gained expanded rights and status. By 1921, women had the right to vote in Austria, Germany, Great Britain, and the United States. So looking at this particular chart, you can see on the very far left, Western Front, the west is the Western Front, it's the west side of Germany. The first Battle of the Marne, 2,000 people of Paris, in Paris taxicabs, sent them to the front lines, believe it or not. And they became bogged down in trench warfare. You dig a long trench, as if you just wanted water to travel from one place to another, but instead you put soldiers in it. Some of these trenches could be quite deep, and that meant that people would not leave these trenches, because if they did, they'd be in an area called no man's land, and they would just be picked off and killed. The Eastern Front is the east border of Germany and Austria-Hungary. They were fighting against Russia on this side. Russia suffered many losses. Italy betrayed Germany in the Triple Alliance and attacked Austria. Germany was successful on the Eastern Front, mainly because Russia ends up pulling out of the war because too many people are dying, and so there wasn't really anybody to fight on this front. Trench warfare, mostly on the Western Front, military leaders expected troop movement, and trenches were unfamiliar in military tactics. The only move was to force hundreds of men to run toward the enemy lines through no man's land. Millions of men died this way. They call this the War of Attrition. The war is based on wearing the other side down, and that's it. War in the air was the first time airplanes were used in battle. One of the most famous, you can see a replica of his plane there, was the Red Baron. Now, if you take a second to look at this slide, this is the one that shows us what was happening during World War I. Now, World War I led to World War II, which World War II led to many other wars, and it just led to so many problems in the earth, and some of which is still felt today. World War II established the killing of so many Jews, which then were given the right to go back to Israel, given the lands after the Holocaust. And those lands after the Holocaust with them going back to that area, caused so many problems in the Middle East today. So it is important to understand what happens and how this affects something that seems like, oh, it was 100 years ago, it's not that important to you. In actuality, it does come to pass in different events that we see around the world even today. Here we have section 2 with a couple of those propaganda posters down at the bottom. You can see one says save, and it tells you what you need to save so that we have enough food. Destroy, that shows Germany in a very bad light because, you know, this monkey is carrying, or this gorilla is carrying off the women. Then there's the two, whether it's British or American, where they need you to come fight, and then the women at the very end, and what they need to do. So increased government. The draft, forced service in military. Government began to control pricing, which is called price fixing. They rationed food, which means you were only allowed to get certain things or you had coupons to get them. And they controlled transportation and import and export. Manipulation of the public means that they are telling you what you need to hear in order for you to get you to do whatever they need you to do. Propaganda, used to convince people to fight, to save food, you could see below there, or to hate the enemy. Protesters were arrested for opposing the war, and atrocities were exaggerated so that people would feel justified in killing other people. Total war in women. Women took on jobs left behind that men had filled. Previous to this, women lost jobs and had lower wages after the war, but it did help give them the new right to vote, which New Zealand was the first country to allow women to vote. Mustard gas. Look at these pictures, you guys, because the first top picture shows you the way mustard gas looks. It's very heavy, and then it falls into the trenches of where the men are, and then you could see what it does to your skin when it hits you. During World War I, a new style of fighting known as trench warfare pitted two armies close enough to each other that they could yell across the lines, but soldiers rarely ventured into the area between the two trenches, commonly referred to as no man's land, for fear of being gunned down, and battles would often settle into a stalemate. Chemical agents such as mustard gas became a way to break that uneasy deadlock. Germany's attempt at chemical weapons came in 1915 at the Battle of Ypres of Belgium in the form of chlorine gas. This is something where we would have an emergency in Las Vegas if there was a chlorine gas leak. The gas cleared large sections of soldiers from the front lines who fled once exposed, and ultimately killed 5,000 opposing troops. Chlorine gas burns the throats of the victims and causes death by asphyxiation, which is a big way of saying suffocation, much like smoke kills people during a house fire. All right, guys, the Russian Revolution. So Russia was unprepared for World War I and suffered massive casualties early in the war. Bread shortages and anger at the mounting casualties brought street protests led by working class women and the workers' general strike in Petrograd, which we now call St. Petersburg, and for a while we called Leningrad. Tsar Nicholas II stepped down, ending an entire Romanov dynasty. You could see the photo of his family there down to the left. And a provisional government was formed. Meanwhile, Soviets, councils representing workers and soldiers, sprang up throughout the country. The Bolsheviks, a party committed to violent revolution, played a crucial role under the leadership of V.I. Lenin, Vladimir Ilyinov Lenin. In October 1917, the Bolsheviks overthrew the provisional government. Civil war ensued between the Bolsheviks, or communists, forces, and anti-communists. Okay, so the communists were the red, the anti-communists were the white forces. Despite aid from the Allied forces, the anti-communists were defeated by a well-disciplined communist Red Army. By 1921, the communists were in complete command of Russia. Now, you could see the family was actually taken out and killed. All of them, all 5 children, in fact. Anastasia is there to the right. I think their names were Maria, Olga, Tatiana, Anastasia, and the boy's name was Alexander. And he had hemophiliac disease, which means that if he got cut, he would bleed profusely. If he got pushed too hard, he would bruise very easily. So, and that's Nicholas the Tsar, like we said, and his wife was Alexandra. Now, as you look at this particular chart, you can see the pictures to the left. One is of Alexandra and the background of this revolution. First of all, Tsar Nicholas had said, okay, we'll end serfdom, let's get rid of it, and we gave land to the poor people. But unfortunately, that just left too many poor people owning land. And then they go into war. They're not prepared. They don't have the weapons. They were basically told, if the guy in front of you gets shot down, you pick up his weapon and fight. We don't have enough weapons for everybody to fight with, so wait till that guy's dead. It's probably not a good feeling if you're that guy in front. His wife was from Germany, so they're fighting Germany, but your wife is German. I mean, that makes it a little bit sketchy. Controlled the government while Tsar Nicholas left. He left to the front lines because the army was so poorly prepared. He kind of thought that it would bolster like positive thoughts about the war if he was there too. She allowed a priest named Rasputin, and you can see that crazy man down below there. And there are entire movies made about this man and what he was able to do and his belief system. So we can call him a priest or a holy man, but really he kind of made his own religion where he believed sex brought you closer to God, to advise her on every issue. And why? Because that little boy, Alexander, she kept thinking that he was healing him, and a mother is only as happy as her saddest child, so she would do anything for him. Eventually Rasputin was assassinated. It's fascinating just to hear about how many times they tried to kill him in one night before he actually died. Women led a revolt on March 8th, wanting peace and bread. In July 1918, the family was executed, every member. The rise of Lenin. So you could see down there those three people, Stalin, Lenin, and Trotsky. The Soviets, or the working class, the radicals, were in St. Petersburg. The Bolsheviks, they were the followers of Karl Marx, the idea of socialism, where I work hard, you don't, but you get to share in the benefit of me working hard. So just basically everything is shared. You don't get to say, this is my cell phone. Anybody gets to use it, okay? Their leader was Lenin. You could see it there in Cyrillic, and you could see his entire name spelled out. Wanted a violent revolution. In 1917, he saw an opportunity to seize power. Germany sent him there to cause problems because he had been ousted and sent into Germany. The Bolsheviks promised to end the war, give land to the poor, and give factories to the workers. And so obviously that spoke volumes to the people that were starving. So they agreed with him that he should be empowered. So the Bolsheviks, on November 6, 1917, the Bolsheviks took power from the provincial government, renamed themselves the Communists. On March 3, 1918, Lenin made peace with Germany by giving up Poland, the Ukraine, Finland, and the Baltics. This removed Russia from World War I. Russia moved into civil war between the Red and the White armies. The red, you could see down below, the Red Army, the Communists, the symbol in that sign, you could see the sickle, which is that kind of C-shaped, that stands for the workers, the farmers, and the hammer stands for the workers united together. Section 4. So in Section 4, this is a summary that you guys can see here. Allied forces finally defeated Germany at the Second Battle of the Marne, but would not make peace with the German Emperor. In the face of upheaval, William, or Wilhelm II, fled Germany. Social Democrats then formed a democratic republic, which signed an armistice, which is like a peace agreement, with the Allies and crushed a communist attempt to seize power. The Austro-Hungarian Empire dissolved into 4 separate states. U.S. President Woodrow Wilson sought to pave the way for a just and lasting peace by creating the League of Nations. However, the Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh penalties on Germany. The war settlements made at the Paris Peace Conference redrew the map of Europe and dissolved the Ottoman Empire. Ignoring promises made during the war, France and Britain took control of several Arab states through a mandate system. As a result of new boundaries, many Eastern European states included large ethnic minorities, setting the stage for later conflicts. And I did tell you about that because that is exactly what ends up happening. And that stage, of course, being World War II. So look right here at these. On April 6, 1917, the United States enters the war on the side of the Allies. The new troops brought a refreshed spirit to the fighting. It just made people get ready, like the substitutes that come into the game. This was just as the Russians left to fight, to concentrate on their own issues. American soldiers were called doughboys. March 1918. Germany was within 50 miles of attacking Paris. They were pushed back at the Second Battle of the Marne on July 18th. By September, Germany knew that the war had been lost. The war ended November 1918 when the German people forced the autocratic, that means like completely controlling government by that one man to the right, out of power and began to form a democratic government. An armistice was signed on November 11th. These are President Wilson's 14 points, and I am not going to read all of them to you today, but you can look up Wilson's 14 points and you can read them. You can see the evacuation of German troops from the Russian territory, the evacuation of German troops from Belgium, the evacuation and restoration of Germany to French territory, all of these, an independent Poland with access to the sea. So you could see that these were what our president felt was necessary in order to keep peace in Europe so that this would not happen again. Okay, look at the map. Here in the center, as I read, the Treaty of Versailles was signed June 28, 1919. It formally ended the war. Treated Germany very bad in the end by making them literally pay money for the damages of the war. It was reduced in size. As you can see on the map there, you can see what Germany looks like. Reduced in size. Russia had become the Soviet Union, or USSR, just so you know, that's in English. If you look at it in Cyrillic, it would look like CCCP, but they don't call their letters that. I'm just giving you the Americanized version. The map of Europe was redrawn. Austria-Hungary was eliminated, and Germany and Russia lost land. New nations emerged: Finland, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, and Poland, Czechoslovakia, Austria, and Hungary. Serbia formed Yugoslavia. 10 million people had died during this war. Now, this is just a review page. If you see the top one where it says cooperation in the alliance system, conflict of World War I, revolution of the Russian Revolution, and internationalism and the Peace of Paris. While you look at what is said on those, that is just basically a summary of the entire chapter. And we have gone over that. If you look down to the right, the Paris Peace Conference, the big three, the countries, the United States, Great Britain, and France. The leader of the United States was President Wilson. Great Britain was Lloyd George. And of France, Clemenceau. I don't speak French. And you could see the goals. Lasting peace. Great Britain wanted Germany to pay, which ended up not being a great thing. And then France just wanted security. So there you have the Treaty of Versailles. What happened? The League of Nations is formed. The responsibility, Germany accepts responsibility for starting the war. Territory, new nations, we went over that. And military strength. Germany will reduce its army and navy, eliminate its air force. German land along the Rhine River is demilitarized. And so when Hitler comes to power, he feeds on these things, like having to pay and not allowing them to have an army. And that's some of the things that started to add to World War II.